NAFA knows its members use various services when they ship products nationally and internationally. Doing it yourself or using many services can be challenging and can actually cost your company more money, even when you choose the lowest price quotes. Ascent Global Logistics is NAFA's official transportation partner, so I interviewed their sales manager, Shad Zimmerman. In this episode of Talking Air Filtration, Shad helps you learn the pitfalls of shipping and logistics, the important differences between volume-based versus density-based shipping, why that 48 by 40 pallet was measured wrong, and how to avoid surprise charges. Whether you ship products internationally or domestically, consider how Ascent Global Logistics might be able to give you a second set of eyes on your logistics budgets and give your shipping coordinator more hours back in their week. Visit nafahq.org/Ascent Global Logistics for more information and let them know NAFA sent you. You can indirectly support NAFA by doing business with our partners. Full disclosure, NAFA receives consideration when you do business with Ascent Global Logistics. Thanks for listening and share this episode with your shipping coordinator. Hi, this is Tony Verovan, and we're talking air filtration with Shad Zimmerman of Ascent Global Logistics. Is that correct? I get it all right?
You've got it right, Tony. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us. Shad and Ascent Global are partners of NAFA, so we really appreciate you helping us out and help getting the word out about our partnership and your program and what you offer here. So, thanks for taking a few minutes to help us tell our members about what we're able to bring to our members.
Yes, I appreciate it. We're honored to be here.
And so what would you tell a NAFA member about what Ascent Global Logistics does? What's kind of your elevator pitch? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the elevator pitch, the short part of it is it's transportation. So, we're well known for our truckload and our LTL services. A lot of our NAFA members are pretty heavy on the LTL side with us, but we do truckload, we do expedite, we do international. So a little bit of everything. If it's moving, we can do it. So that's the short order.
Right. You're moving stuff, right? So
Moving stuff.
so a lot of our members are both like distributor members and also manufacturers. So there might be people who manufacture obviously air filtration equipment or testing equipment or stuff like that, and also maybe media as
Mhm.
well. So you're working with members that probably do that and more, I would imagine.
Correct. Yes.
What does it mean when you talk about logistics versus just like shipping something on a truck?
Right. Yeah. So it's very simple when you hear transportation. People think, how hard can it be? I pick up a box here, I move it there. The logistics part is everything that happens in between. Once you get into the industry or you are a shipper and you get knee deep into it, you start realizing all of the moving pieces. It's not as simple as moving a friend from one house to another. So the logistics piece is managing the industry for our customers. It's ever changing. It's a volatile industry. There's codes and classification changes. It can get very, very heavy very quickly. And that's really where we shine. I always say that every shipper needs a champion. And you need that champion in your corner to look out for you as things change. You need a champion that's going to fight for you. That's absolutely critical. So we're dealing with thousands upon thousands of carriers. And in order to make sure that those carriers bring the right level of service that each individual customer needs, that's where we are. That's what we do. And so it's managing the full scope of things. It's looking out for budgets. It's looking out for expectations. Meaning, are we getting it picked up on time, delivering on time? If there's an expedite situation, that we're putting it on the right modes. Does it have to go by air? Can it work with team drive? So there's so many moving pieces in it. When you look at it from 30,000 foot, it's moving a pallet from one spot to another. When you
Right.
get in close, you start to see all of the nitty gritty that goes with it.
So let's talk about the nitty gritty, right? So what are some of the challenges? Why can't I, as a shipper, as a NAFA member, just go like call up a trucking company and do that? I could do that, but you know, what is some of the nitty gritty? What are the pitfalls that you run into when you start to ship stuff across the country, or even, maybe across the border?
Yeah, so it's constant changes in the industry are the one of the biggest challenges. Those are the pitfalls that happen. We see it on a regular basis where a manufacturer, distributor, they've been shipping the same product for 5, 10 years, and they've been using a certain classification code. They've been doing it the same way. All of a sudden, that changes. That's very frustrating. It's very hard to cope with and be ready for. So when that's where your partner in transportation is always looking out and updating. So you look at it on the LTL front. Um, there is more freight moving than there are trucks available to move it. So what happens is carriers are flush with freight. They've got more moving than they ever have before, but they're trying to do that with the same amount of manpower and the same amount of trucks. So when you have a situation like that, service starts to suffer. We see more missed pickups and delays and pickups and deliveries than we ever have before. And if you're a shipper and you don't account for that being a possibility, it can be very disruptive to your transportation network. You've got every shipper has a customer. That customer is expecting that freight. We try to build in, the right kind of contingencies. We try to make sure that, we're preparing for all of that, to make sure that if it's a critical delivery, we're going to make that critical delivery. We'll make sure we put it on the right carrier to make sure that it's going the way that it needs to be. Biggest thing is that shift in classification, and we're moving more towards density-based classification than
What does that
than
mean?
before. So density base is it's more of a calculation than a book. So if you've ever seen the NMFC code book, it's a big thick book about looks like a Bible, and inside of it is descriptions of everything you can imagine, and you're trying to figure out what classification code you're supposed to use. That NMFC number tells us the class code. So the higher the class code, generally the more expensive it is. I always use the description of cotton balls versus steel plates. So if you have a pallet full of cotton balls, it's very lightweight, not very dense. It's more expensive to ship than a pallet of steel plates. Steel plates ride better, trucks weigh down better. It's what carriers want. So that density calculator gives us the density of it, and it really is a better system. It's just not all the way there yet. So we're somewhere in between. So there's times when one shipper might have freight that is nice and neat in a cube, 48-inch by 40 by 48-inch tall pallet. That's the perfect measurements. That's a cube for us. They might have half their freight that moves that way. The other half may break cube, meaning it's taller, it's out, it doesn't fit in that footprint, and they want to hit it. Carriers want to hit it with a density calculation, and that may not always return that freight class that a customer expects to return. So it's frustrating for shippers to try to figure out which way it's going to go. Everybody works on a budget, and they're trying to determine what it's going to cost to ship that freight, and we don't want surprises. Those surprises, unfortunately, can come in the form of reweighs and reclassifications and added fees,
Mhm.
which is frustrating, obviously. On the truckload side of it, it's we have we have a driver shortage. More and more drivers, as they're getting older and retiring, uh, we don't have that youth movement coming in behind them. It's not, it's a great profession to be a part of. It can be a very lucrative profession, but when people are graduating high school and college, not many of them are saying, I want to be a truck driver. So we're not getting that youth movement. And when you have that happening, it causes capacity issues. So there's never enough trucks in an area to handle all the freight we want. So that also drives prices up because there's not as many drivers out there competing for it. They can kind of cherry pick what they want.
So can you give me kind of like a little mini case study, or an example where, one of your customers, I guess before they discovered you, one of our members, um, had this problem, right? They were maybe choosing the wrong way to ship something, whether it be, the volume versus the density. Maybe they made a mistake on that. Can you give an example of, like, maybe also include the dollar amount or
Mhm.
relative dollars of, like, you came in and kind of saved the day or saved them thousands of dollars. You have something on the tip of your mind on that?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of them. And really, it's usually a little bit of all of that I just talked about. Definitely with the class and the density and those factors, but generally, what we see is it's when a customer has gotten into a comfort zone for a long time with one provider. Now that can be a good thing. We have a lot of that. We have customers that have been here for 20 years with us, which is almost unheard of in this industry. Uh, but we're audited on a regular basis. Those customers don't just lean on that relationship and make assumptions that we're going to do everything the way we're supposed to. Now we do well in those audits, which is really good. But situations that come up a lot of times is with heavy volume shippers, but very diverse freight. So you think of a distribution center. You have a distributor that is shipping out hundreds of different types of products, and those are going in multiple sizes and directions. It used to be easier, and so they usually, one of the reasons we get a lot of customers is out of frustration. They've gotten tired of the reclass and the reways, and so we'll go out physically. We'll go out and see these customers and look at what they're doing. Sometimes we can make suggestions on packaging. Sometimes it's as simple as just explaining what density means and what freight is going to be hit that way. So I was at a place not that long ago. They almost everything they ship stacks about 6 to 8 feet tall. So that breaks that cube. The reason I was there is they're very frustrated. They're getting a lot of rebills and reclassifications. They put that cost of shipping in built in already for their customers. So if they get rebilled later, it's almost too late for them to go back and try to recoup that money. And so what we found when they got there was that really more of their freight probably should have been moving as a density calculation, which in the end might cost them more for this specific customer. It might cost them more at the time of quote for their customer, but it's going to save them long run because it's never just a reweigh and reclass. There's also the inspection fees that go with it, the weight and inspection fee that comes along, $35 to $50 on top of everything. So this is a customer that we're helping now to make sure that they're just quoting everything correctly in the beginning. Make sure that we're taking all those dimensions, all of the descriptions of what they're shipping, and giving them the most honest and correct rate, so that when they're working with their customer, there's no surprises. They know what to build in. They know the exact rate to build in, and we're going to avoid all the headaches and heartache of rebills and reclassifications. And, carriers aren't always fast, so they can be 30, 60, 90 days later, and all of a sudden a rebill comes in. It's very difficult for companies to deal with.
Yeah, boy, there's surprises like that are no good, especially if you're dealing, especially with shipping something internationally. Now you've also, the last thing you want to do is get some sort of customs bill out of nowhere as well. Or so having some other reclassification or fee like, oh, you measured it wrong, or oops, it was heavier than you had reported or whatever, I'm sure is frustrating. And also I'm a little surprised, Shad, is because everything I learned in physics told me a pound of feathers was the same as a pound of bricks. And this is like totally blowing my mind here.
Yes, yeah. Transportation does not follow the rules of physics. So yeah,
Well,
it
to
is
a degree,
all
yeah.
about right. It is all about having that truck weighted down.
Right.
Heavy dense freight, it travels better. It's more desirable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm sure it makes more sense when they're trying to load just down to the loading out. Like where do you put that weight? Where do you put the lighter volume, sort of thing. So yeah, I hadn't thought of that. So I'm sure it's important for people to think about even how they packaging, things. How do they
Absolutely.
put something on a pallet, before they even put it into your hands?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The packaging is going to be absolutely critical too. And that's an area that we've been able to help a lot of customers with. The Typically what a customer will do is they will put a pallet down, and it's a 48-inch pallet, 48 by 40, so it looks like a square almost, and they stack their freight on it. Uh, some cases, it's what we call pretty freight. Well boxed, shrink wrapped, doesn't overhang the sides of the pallet. It's not too tall. Those sort of things. That's nice looking freight. Well, that doesn't always work for everybody. Different companies make different products, and not all the products are going to be what we want to call in transportation pretty.
Hmm.
There's ladders and there's oversized pieces of equipment and different things that, quite frankly, hey, that's your business. You have to be able to ship it. So even little things as far as instructing that you have a pallet, and even if that freight's only hanging over a few inches on each side, that's the actual space. So if you gave a carrier, your partner in transportation, you give them the dimensions. You say it's not 48 by 40 because that's the pallet, but in reality, it's 52 by, and then all of a sudden they're going to get reweighs and reclasses and inspections because it's bigger than they said. The best way to look at it is when that truck backs up to the dock, they have only so many spots on that truck, and those spots are divided out for 48 by 40 pallets. So they want to charge by the space that they're taking. Even if you're only cheating into that other space by a few inches, that limits what they can put there. So 48 by 40 is a fit in the box, but a 50 by 50 is now taking up more than one spot because it's cheating into those other areas.
Yeah. And if everybody does that, guess what? It adds up, right?
Absolutely does.
Yeah.
And especially, as I mentioned, in a situation where there's more freight moving than trucks there are to move it, you get a truck that shows up and they think they're picking up one pallet and it's going to fit neatly in one spot. Well, that pallet cheats into two other spots, and now it's three spots are taken away. Somebody's freight may not get picked up that day because the truck was full.
Right. 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 And that affects everybody else's timeline.
Right.
So, and so people who are thinking of reading, think about this. Think about when you're parking in the parking lot, right? So,
Mhm.
cheat over in that parking space, that just throws off the whole balance of the universe, for everybody else parking in the
Absolutely.
parking lot. Just like that, right? That's
Correct.
maybe a good analogy.
Absolutely. I love good visuals.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm visualizing here. Yeah, there's certainly websites for bad parking,
Yes, there are.
and Reddits if people are familiar with that. So I think we've danced around this a little bit, but I want to make sure we stick the landing for our members. So let's talk specifically about how do our NAFA shippers ensure they're receiving really competitive rates. And again, I think we've touched on this, but I want to make sure we really kind of let's serve it up on a plate to people.
Yes, absolutely. It is all about fact checking. The first thing that I always tell people to do is, start with one area of your transportation. Start with, say, the inbound freight that you receive. So whether it's the raw materials that you use in the manufacturer, it's the packaging materials, or it's the actual merchandise that you're going to then sort and segment out. Look at the inbound first. That is usually where you're going to get your that's where you're going to be surprised the most. To put it soft, the more often than not, it's easy for a customer to say, you know what, hey, we're vendor routed. Our vendor takes care of that. They just build the cost in to the cost of materials or merchandise. I don't have time to take care of that. What you will find is the average markup on top of what we call fair market transportation rate for a vendor is about 25%. That's the average. We've seen much higher than that, which we've seen some numbers that were, quite frankly, alarming in situations where a customer's been partnering with a vendor for years. They've had a long relationship, and that uptick in pricing has increased slightly each year, and it's gotten to a point where they're comfortable. They don't have to deal with it, so it seems easy. Just let that freight be. Then we do the price check, and we find out that there's a huge chunk of money right there that they're paying way above a fair rate. And I'll talk a little bit and down the line here about ways to get around that. But taking control of your inbound is not as complex or complicated as it sounds. That's probably one of the that's the biggest where you get the most bang for your buck is in doing that. What I'll say with LTL truckload is build consistency. So, and what I mean by that is if you've got consistent repeat lanes, you have a customer that you are sending multiple times a week to or month or whatever it is, when you're going out to price that, make sure one that you have all your details. Be as precise as you possibly can be. Have a calibrated scale. Make sure that you're measuring the true dimensions of that freight. Make sure you're very detailed in explaining what it is we're shipping, so that you're getting an accurate quote back. But also, when it's a repeat lane, when it's a customer that you're doing religiously, make sure that you mention that. That is, especially on the truckload piece, that is a bargaining chip. it's easier for us to go to a carrier and say, hey, we run this lane 4 times a week, 4 times a month, 10 times a year, whatever that number is, and say, if you want to be a partner on these loads with us, give us the partner rate. Don't give us the today spot rate. Um, now when you get all of those back, all of those rates back, you want to look for anomalies, and they're gonna be in there because there's so many details. And getting the right rate is, if you see a huge range from your lowest to your highest, you want to check that. You want to make sure that everybody's quoting the same thing. So I talked about those freight classifications. If we don't give enough information, if we don't get enough information to quote, and we say, okay, well, based on what we have here, we think this is a class 150. Okay, well, class 150 is going to quote much higher than a class 70. And maybe the freight fits a little more towards a class 70. So you're comparing one rate to another, and you see, geez, this guy over here is $100 higher than this one. That's just too much. I can't believe that there's that big of a difference. That's usually when you want to raise some questions, really dig into the quote and look at it. So fact checking was the short answer, but really just be diligent in all of that. Have your information. Don't be afraid to break away and check the market.
How is Ascent going to help with that?
We help in a lot of ways. So the expertise is huge. We have customers that call in and say, I don't know how to class this. Maybe it's a new product. We get it a lot with distribution and distribution networks. This is a different product than anything we've ever done before. The difference between a shelf that comes to you in a box that you have to put together versus a shelf that's already assembled standing up. You know, so we get a lot of a lot of customers that come in and just say, "Hey, help me! I don't know how to class this." We are great at that. Our ops team that we have, they're always available on the phone. Um, I'm biased. I'll go ahead and say that I am biased, but I think they're the best in the world. So, they're going to help with that. Now, on the more technical side, we have a web portal that all of our customers can have access to. It allows them to go in, punch in all the dimensions, all the information, where they're shipping, or where they're picking up, where they're shipping to, everything, and it will give them a rate back. So that gives them an instant quote back, helps them with time management. It's much easier just to jump in. You can rate your own, you can quote it, you can book it, you can track it and trace it on our web, amongst other things. But that's a huge time saver, because a typical shipper who's not taking advantage of a web portal, they're sending out an email, typically blind copied with any number of people like us that are on there that they've met through time, and now they're waiting for all of those quotes to come back. And it can be an hour, it can be 2 hours. Finally, they get all the quotes back, and now they've got to look at them, and some of them weed out the outliers, but they've got to then figure it out from there. When you go on a web portal, it allows you to run a quote and get multiple carriers at once. So you have multiple quotes to compare right there. So it's a great time saver. On tracking and tracing as well. If you're not using a web portal, you got to call your carrier, or you've got to call your broker, and you got to say, hey, where's my freight? More often than not, they say, "I don't let us reach out to the driver. We'll get back to you." Hopefully they're fast, but they're not always. Driver may not answer right away. They may not be available. So it could be an hour, 2 hours before you have that. And it might be something that's critical to your business or critical to your customer's business. And we really need to know where it is. So that web portal allows instant tracking that way. I mentioned the ops team being there to always help. Some people aren't comfortable entering their stuff on the web, in the web portal, because maybe it's a little too complex. There's too much going on with their freight and they don't feel comfortable putting it in there. The ops team is available 24/7 to help with that. And then another area that I feel like doesn't get as much love and attention as they should, is our freight pay and audit team. So freight pay and audit team reviews all invoices that come through, and they review them to make sure that they are consistent with the quoted rate. If anything is out of line, they go straight to the carrier and dispute those fees for the customer. And oftentimes the customer is never even aware there was an issue, because it got taken care of before it even got to them. That way too, when you do get additional fees for services or weight and inspection, by the time it gets to the customer, we will still answer any questions we can. We'll still fight for that customer if they feel it's wrong, but you can promise them that it's been reviewed at that point. So, those are the biggest things. I would also say, one other area is consolidated billing. So heavy shippers, multiple shippers a week, typically you're getting emailed invoices for every single individual load. and we do a consolidated invoice. So we pick a day and during the week that you want your bills to come, and it comes in one consolidated email. All the information is still there for you, but you're getting one email instead of multiple emails that kind of look a lot alike. So it's easy to miss one. A lot of times when we talk to our shippers, they go, "Okay, well that sounds neat, I guess." I said, Go tell your accounts payable department about that. They will love you forever. Makes their lives a lot easier."
Yeah. So I think there's two things that I heard. You told me a lot. So
Mhm.
there's a lot there and there's a lot of great benefits there. But the two big things that I heard were the last two ones, right? The second set of eyes, right? So if you've got, someone at your company who is poring over invoices and looking at this stuff, right? What's the value of that, right? What's the value of having, when you get the bill, knowing that, you're probably still going to look at it, but know that, okay, your partner has gone to bat for you, and perhaps even you guys have, note something in the invoicing. Hey, this was a problem. We fixed this and saved a couple $100 from this. So I think that second set of eyes is fantastic, because what's the value in then having someone else who's you're spending 40, 50, $70,000 a year on, or you're paying someone, and so do the hourly. If it takes somebody an hour and a half or 2 hours to kind of go through, and you're paying them 60 grand a year, to go hunt down $100, I mean, you're probably not much more expensive, or maybe less expensive, in a lot of cases when you figure in the time, right? All the time devoted.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it right on the head with that. That's the hidden cost of transportation. It's easy to look at what was my quote and say, well, that's what it cost me to ship it. But there's a lot more involved. And to that point, if we're not doing that with every bill that comes through, the shipper's going to have to do that. So they're right. They're going to have somebody that's pouring over that information and doing all of that. So, it saves. Those are the hidden savings that are sometimes hard to see, in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the other point was, yes, that other, having the second set of eyes, but also just having that person look out for you. And if you're doing, if you're making sure that you are, hey, watch out for this whole density volume thing, right? Watch out for this, watch out for that. This whole story of value and price, service, and value, or was it price, service, and quality? Right, pick
Hmm.
two. It's true in every single industry. Go build a building, and have an architect design it, right? You're going to have three architects. Two of them are going to be okay. One's going to be cheap. Why? Right? Same thing with a construction company. Some of them are going to be using substandard material. I mean, it's always true. And it's kind of funny, because in human nature, here we are, we're like, oh, let's get the cheapest. But we're all smart people. We should know better, and know that some things are worth paying a little more, or the same for, because it's like, get that cheaper price. It's not always going to be cheaper, especially if you get that bill later on. I buy stuff on Amazon, right? I just bought my son a knockoff Camelback hydration system,
Hmm.
and it was $18. Well, I should have spent 40 because the thing leaks, right? So I'm like, eh. So anyway, it's this age old tale, and you can tell someone, sometimes things are worth paying for, but we all have to kind of go through that experience of
Hmm.
of getting burned. And so, but getting burned with high transportation costs or delays or that sort of thing, I don't know. To me, some things are worth paying for. And I'm not saying you guys are higher. I'm just saying that, what, just when you're comparing quotes and comparing, like, look into that stuff of, like, sometimes that second set of eyes and having all that pre-work done is worth it. And if you guys are less on certain areas, great, even better.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We're always going to be competitive, and we feel really good about that. But we also need to make sure we're matching up the right service with the right need. Cheapest isn't always the best. There are times when a customer comes and says, "Hey, just give me the cheapest option. It doesn't matter if this thing delivers next week or next month. Just needs to be moving." Okay, that's great, and we're still going to put it on a great service. But there is definitely those situations, and I think with your industry, there is such a I think so much growth in that industry. Everyone is aware of anything filtration, anything can be seen as, green energy type. So air filtration, water filtration, those sort of things. There's so much growth in that industry, and with that uh, comes a lot more demand on the shippers. And with that demand, things can slow down. So we always want to make sure that we're putting that right service together. And like I said, we're always going to be competitive. We're very proud of that. We fight hard to make sure we have the rates in place. But in the meantime, when we're being competitive, I think we're just offering a multiple layers of service that a lot of our competition isn't able to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Shad, I think you nailed it there. Is there anything else, I guess, in a parting word, or is there like, what's that one thing, and kind of as we're ending, is that you want to give our members kind of a final thought on, as far as like, improving their logistics programs, or
Mhm.
one thing that you might say to someone?
Yeah, be thorough and be patient. Everyone's in a hurry. Everyone is doing more work than one person should likely be doing in more cases than not. So when your your partner in transportation is asking you a lot of questions about your freight, it can be frustrating. You just want to hurry up, give them the dimensions, and go. But if they're not asking you a lot of questions, they could be setting you up for failure, and that's what we want to make sure we avoid. So, be patient, be thorough, take that extra step to make sure that what you're putting out there is what we're quoting, cut down on those issues in between, and consistently communicate. Build those relationships, with us. Build those relationships with your rep, so that the more they know about you, the more they know about your company, the better they'll be at really identifying anomalies that could have been snowballed into a bigger issue for you, and getting them corrected or asking you the right questions to make sure that we're on the right track. And on the flip side of that too, they're going to be better at identifying opportunities to improve your transportation, whether that's through mode optimization or something like that. They might identify, hey, we're shipping so many of these pallets in this one direction. What if we consolidated them on a truckload? We would save them a lot of money. That would speed up their transportation time, and make things, quite frankly, a lot more simple for them, less paperwork and all that. So the greater the relationship you have with people like me on the teams that I have out here, the easier it is for them to bring the right service to you, and the easier it is for you as a shipper to be able to know who to go to when you need them quick, get that service, and go. So and the summarize, be open, be thorough, and lean on us. That's what we need from you.
That's why we call you a partner. You're a logistics and transportation partner, right?
Great, yes sir.
Fantastic. Well, Shad, how do people reach you? I know, just to let people know, we do have a ton of information on the NAFA website.
Mhm.
There's an on-demand webinar there
Great.
as well, so that people they can listen to this. They get some information from listening to this again. They can watch that webinar. I know there's a brochure and some content there, and I believe there's even a way on that website, on nafahq.org, to fill out a form and get more information from you. Besides that, do you want to provide your information and how people might get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. If you outside of all those links, obviously, there's any number of ways for you as a customer to get a hold of us. Whether it's clicking on the link, filling out the paperwork, whether it's emailing us. If it's LTL, if it's truckload, I mean, we've got all of those links are on there, so you can go direct to us. Call us direct in the office. There's always a good way to go to. It's Our number here is 330-342-8700. There's a very nice voice prompt that'll make sure it steers you towards the department you need, whether that's LTL, truckload, expedite, those sort of things. But yeah, however you want to reach out to us, whatever works for you, and we've always got someone manning those modes of communication, so we'll be here and ready.
If you do hear about Ascent Global through NAFA, make sure you let the folks know that we sent you. On the podcast episode, I'll include a link so that people can get a hold of you and fill out a form right through our
Perfect.
website as well. That sound fair?
That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very good. Well, Shad, I really appreciate your time. I think it was very thorough. Hopefully people will get a better idea of how you might be able to help them.
Yes, we appreciate you doing this for us, and we've really enjoyed being members with you guys for quite a long time, and we look forward to continuing that.
You bet. Well, thank you for support. Shad Zimmerman, Ascent Global Logistics.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
For more information about how the National Air Filtration Association's membership, networking, education, and certifications can improve your career and business, visit nafahq.org.